Welcome back, everyone, to your daily UPSC Current Affairs briefing for March 31st, 2025, Part 1. We have a really interesting set of sources today covering a range of topics that I know are important for your preparation.
Absolutely. A great mix of news items from space technology to medical science to environmental concerns and even international relations.
Exactly. We'll be looking at things like ISRO's progress on their semi-cryogenic engine and what that means for launching satellites into GTO.
We'll also be discussing the latest news on xenotransplantation and that recent breakthrough with a pig liver transplant in China. Fascinating stuff, but definitely raises some ethical questions too.
For sure. And of course, we can't ignore the environmental front. We have updates on the concerning decline of Amur tigers, the urgent situation with the Ulhas River, and even the potential extinction threat to frankincense trees.
And then we'll shift gears a bit to look at some interesting developments in international relations and infrastructure, like the debate surrounding CERN's proposed future circular collider.
Oh, and we'll touch on India's humanitarian efforts in Myanmar with Operation Brahma, and a significant update to maritime law with the new Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill.
A really packed agenda, as always. And remember, some of these topics might be a bit of a revision from our previous discussions, which is always good to reinforce that learning.
Exactly. Now, as you listen today, I encourage you to think about how these seemingly disparate news items might actually be connected and what the underlying themes and implications are for India and the world.
A great point, because the UPSC exam isn't just about knowing facts. It's about understanding those connections and demonstrating that broader awareness.
Exactly. So let's dive right in with our first topic, ISRO's semi-cryogenic engine and the concept of Geostationary Transfer Orbit, or GTO. This is a crucial area for India's space program.
Definitely. The latest news is that ISRO has successfully conducted a hot test of the Engine Power Head Test article, the PHTA, for their semi-cryogenic engine.
And the PHTA is what exactly?
It's essentially the heart of the engine, the part that controls the flow and mixing of propellants. So a successful hot test of the PHTA means they've validated the design and functionality of a key component of this new engine.
Okay, so that's a big step forward. Now, this engine is meant for the booster stage of the LVM-3, right?
Exactly. The LVM-3 is India's most powerful launch vehicle at the moment,
Yeah.
and this new engine is going to give it a significant boost in capability.
Now, before we get into the specifics of the engine, I think it's worth taking a moment to explain what Geostationary Transfer Orbit, or GTO, is all about, because we hear that term a lot in space news.
You're absolutely right. It's a fundamental concept. So imagine you want to place a satellite in geostationary orbit, or GEO, where it stays fixed above a particular point on Earth. That's the ideal orbit for things like communication satellites.
Right, makes sense.
But launching directly into GEO requires a lot of energy. Instead, what we do is we use a transfer orbit like GTO.
So GTO is like a stepping stone to GEO.
Precisely, GTO is a highly elliptical orbit, with its lowest point, the perigee, at about 180 to 200 kilometers above Earth, and its highest point, the apogee, at around 305 to 900 kilometers,
Yeah.
which is very close to GEO altitude.
I see. So the launch vehicle puts the satellite into GTO, and then the satellite uses its own thrusters to get to GEO.
Exactly. That way we can use a smaller, less powerful launch vehicle, which is more cost-effective. Now, this semi-cryogenic engine that ISRO is developing is really interesting because it uses a combination of liquid oxygen, LOX, and refined kerosene RP1 as propellants.
And what's the advantage of that?
Well, LOX is cryogenic, which means it needs to be stored at ultra-low temperatures. But RP1 can be stored at normal temperatures. This makes the engine easier to handle and less complex compared to a fully cryogenic engine, which would use liquid hydrogen as fuel.
So this 2.5-second hot test that they conducted, what exactly did they achieve?
They validated the ignition sequence of the engine and its operation in boost trap mode, which is essentially how the engine starts up and builds thrust, and all the parameters they were monitoring met expectations.
So where do things go from here for this engine?
Well, this was just a test of the PHTA.
Yep.
Next, they'll be testing a fully integrated engine. And eventually, this engine will power the SC-120 stage of the LVM-3, replacing the current L-110 stage.
And what impact will that have on the LVM-3's capabilities?
The big thing is the increase in payload capacity to GTO. They're expecting to go up from 4 tons to 5 tons.
That's a significant jump. What kind of impact will that have on India's space program?
It means we can launch heavier satellites, larger scientific payloads, or even multiple satellites in a single mission. It enhances our competitiveness in the global space market and opens up new possibilities for space exploration and scientific research.
So a lot to be excited about with this semi-cryogenic engine. Now let's move from the vastness of space to a much more down-to-earth, though ethically complex field, medical science, and specifically xenotransplantation.
Oh, yes. This is a truly fascinating area with some potentially groundbreaking implications. There's been a major development recently with Chinese researchers successfully transplanting a gene-modified pig liver into a brain-dead human patient.
This sounds like something straight out of science fiction. So remind us, what exactly is xenotransplantation?
Basically, it's the transplantation of living cells, tissues, or organs from one species to another, in this case from a pig to a human.
And this isn't entirely new, right? I seem to recall hearing about attempts to transplant animal organs into humans decades ago.
You're right, there were attempts back in the 1980s even using baboon hearts. But the major challenge has always been immune rejection. The human body naturally attacks and rejects foreign tissues.
So how have things changed?
Advances in genetic engineering have allowed us to modify animal organs to make them more compatible with the human immune system. And of course, there's also the use of immunosuppressant drugs to suppress the immune response.
Okay, so that explains the genetically modified pig liver. Now, why pig specifically?
Pigs actually have a number of advantages for xenotransplantation. They share anatomical and physiological similarities with humans, and their organs are roughly the same size.
And I'm guessing they're readily available.
Exactly. Pigs are widely farmed, so there's a potential for a sustainable and cost-effective supply of organs.
Makes sense. Now, this recent liver transplant in China builds on some earlier work, right? Wasn't there a pig heart transplant a couple of years ago?
You're right. In 2022, a genetically modified pig heart was transplanted into a human patient for the first time. It was a major milestone, demonstrating that these modified organs could potentially function in a human body. However, the patient unfortunately only survived for a couple of months.
So this new liver transplant takes things a step further.
Absolutely. This research was conducted at the 4th Military Medical University in Xi'an, China. They went beyond just modifying a few genes in the pig liver. They actually edited 6 genes to prevent rejection and even inserted human genes to enhance compatibility.
Wow, that's incredible. And what were the results?
They monitored the patient for 10 days, and the transplanted liver showed signs of functioning. It produced bile and albumin, and there was stable blood flow.
And no signs of rejection.
They didn't observe any rejection during that time, which they attributed to the genetic modifications and the immunosuppressant drugs they used.
This is truly remarkable research. But what are the potential real-world applications of this technology?
Well, the researchers believe that these gene-modified pig livers could serve as a bridge therapy for patients with acute liver failure.
Meaning?
It could buy them time while they're waiting for a human liver transplant, giving their body a chance to recover or to survive until a suitable donor organ becomes available.
That's an amazing prospect, but I imagine there are still a lot of challenges and ethical considerations.
Oh, absolutely. For one thing, we still don't know the long-term viability of these organs in humans. And there are always ethical concerns about using animals for organ transplantation.
Definitely something to keep a close eye on. Now let's turn our attention to a very different issue, the concerning decline of Amur tigers.
This is a really worrying trend. A recent study published in the journal Oryx has highlighted a sharp increase in tiger roadkill incidents, particularly affecting Amur tigers.
Amur tigers, those are the ones found in Russia, right?
Exactly. They're also known as Siberian tigers, and they're the largest tiger subspecies in the world. Sadly, they're also endangered with only a few hundred left in the wild.
And their habitat is?
Primarily the birch forests of eastern Russia, though there are small populations in China and possibly North Korea too.
And what makes them unique apart from their size?
Well, they've adapted to the cold climate with a thick coat and a stocky build. And they're known for their solitary nature and their powerful hunting skills.
So this rise in roadkill incidents is adding to the existing pressures on their population.
Exactly. Amur tigers are already facing threats from habitat loss, poaching, and human-wildlife conflict. And now this increasing risk from vehicle collisions is making their situation even more precarious.
So this is a real wake-up call for conservation efforts. Now let's shift gears again to another environmental concern, this time closer to home, the urgent situation with the Ulhas River in Maharashtra.
Yes, the Maharashtra government has taken a decisive step to address the issue of excessive water hyacinth growth in the Ulhas River.
They've decided to
remove all the water hyacinth from the river within just 15 days. It's a massive undertaking.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty drastic measure. What's the reason for such urgency?
Water hyacinth is an invasive species, and it's been choking the Ulhas River. It blocks sunlight, prevents oxygen from getting into the water, and basically disrupts the entire ecosystem.
And the Ulhas River is a pretty important river, right?
Absolutely. It's a major west-flowing river in Maharashtra. It originates in the Sahyadri Hills and flows for 122 kilometers before emptying into the Arabian Sea. It provides water for drinking irrigation and industrial use for a large population.
So this water hyacinth infestation is a serious problem that needs to be addressed quickly.
Definitely. It's not just an environmental issue. It also affects people's livelihoods and the overall health of the river ecosystem.
So the government's action is understandable. Now let's talk about another plant species this time, one that's facing a potential extinction threat, frankincense trees.
This is a really fascinating story with both ecological and cultural implications. The IUCN has recently warned that several species of frankincense-producing trees belonging to the genus Boswellia are at risk of extinction.
Frankincense trees as in the source of that fragrant resin.
Exactly. It's been used for centuries in incense perfumes and traditional medicine. It has a very rich history and cultural significance.
And which species are particularly at risk?
Several species on Socotra Island in Yemen have been reclassified as endangered or critically endangered.
So Socotra Island, that's that unique island off the coast of Yemen, known for its strange and wonderful plant life, right?
Yes, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site with a high degree of endemism, meaning many of its species are found nowhere else in the world.
So what's causing this decline in frankincense trees?
A number of factors are contributing: habitat loss, overgrazing by livestock, climate change, and unsustainable harvesting practices.
Unsustainable harvesting meaning?
Basically, tapping the trees too frequently or too aggressively for their resin, which weakens them and reduces their ability to reproduce.
So it's a combination of factors putting these trees at risk. Now let's move on to a more positive conservation story, the recent declaration of a new biodiversity heritage site in Tamil Nadu.
Yes, this is good news. The Tamil Nadu government has notified the Kasampatty Sacred Grove, also known as Vera Covil, as a biodiversity heritage site.
And what makes this sacred grove so special?
It's a relatively small area, less than 5 hectares, but it's home to a remarkable diversity of plant and animal life. It's located near the Alagarmalai Reserve Forest and is surrounded by mango plantations.
So it's like a little island of biodiversity amidst agricultural land.
Exactly, and that's why it's important to protect these kinds of areas. They serve as refuges for species that might otherwise be lost due to habitat fragmentation and loss.
Now remind us, what exactly is a biodiversity heritage site, or BHS?
It's an area that's recognized for its outstanding biodiversity value. It could be a unique ecosystem, a rare habitat, or an area that's home to threatened or endemic species.
And these sites are protected under the Biological Diversity Act of 2002, right?
Exactly. The Act empowers state governments to declare areas as BHS in consultation with local communities. And once an area is declared as BHS, it receives legal protection and conservation efforts are put in place.
So this new BHS in Tamil Nadu is a positive step towards protecting the state's biodiversity. Now let's switch gears completely and talk about a massive project that's generating a lot of buzz and debate in the scientific community, the Future Circular Collider, or FCC.
Yes, the FCC. This is a truly ambitious project proposed by CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research. It's basically a gigantic particle collider, a 91-kilometer ring tunnel that will be built underground straddling the border between Switzerland and France.
91 kilometers, that's huge.
It is. It would dwarf the current Large Hadron Collider, or LHC, which is 27 kilometers in circumference.
And what's the purpose of this mega collider?
The FCC is designed to smash particles together at even higher energies than the LHC, enabling scientists to probe the fundamental building blocks of matter in even greater detail.
And what are they hoping to find?
They're looking for new particles, new forces, new insights into the nature of dark matter and dark energy, the mysteries of the universe.
It sounds incredibly exciting, but also incredibly expensive.
You're right. The estimated cost is around $30 billion. And that's just the initial cost. Ongoing operational costs would be substantial too.
So naturally, there's some debate about whether this project is worth the investment.
Exactly. Some physicists argue that the FCC is the next logical step in our quest to understand the universe, and that the potential scientific breakthroughs justify the cost.
And others disagree?
Yes. Some critics argue that the money could be better spent on other areas of science, or that there are alternative and more cost-effective ways to achieve similar scientific goals.
Like what?
Well, there's a lot of interest in linear colliders, which are a different type of particle accelerator. They tend to be less expensive and can offer certain advantages over circular colliders.
And I've also heard about this new technology called plasma wake field acceleration.
Yes, that's a very promising avenue. It uses plasma waves to accelerate particles over much shorter distances, potentially leading to much smaller and cheaper particle accelerators in the future.
So it's not a foregone conclusion that the FCC will be built. There are alternative approaches being explored.
Exactly. The scientific community is still debating the best path forward.
Hmm.
Now, before we move on, let's just clarify what a hadron is, because you mentioned colliding hadrons in both the LHC and the FCC.
You're right, not everyone might be familiar with that term. So what exactly is a hadron?
A hadron is a composite particle made up of quarks, which are elementary particles. The most common hadrons are protons and neutrons, which make up the nucleus of an atom.
Okay, so the LHC and the proposed FCC smash protons together at incredibly high speeds.
Exactly. And by analyzing the debris from these collisions, scientists can learn about the fundamental forces and particles that govern the universe.
Now, for context, can you tell us a bit about the Large Hadron Collider and its achievements so far?
The LHC has been operational since 2008. It's located at CERN on the border of Switzerland and France. It's a remarkable feat of engineering, and it's already produced some groundbreaking results.
Like what?
Well, the most famous discovery was the Higgs boson in 2012, which was a major confirmation of the standard model of particle physics.
The Higgs boson, that's the particle that gives other particles mass, right?
Exactly. And the LHC has also made significant contributions to our understanding of other particles and forces, including the strong force, which binds quarks together.
So the LHC has been a huge success, and the proposed FCC is aiming to build on that legacy.
Exactly. But whether it gets built or not remains to be seen. It's a decision with huge scientific and financial implications.
Definitely. Now let's shift gears to international relations and a strategically important area, the Chicken's Neck Corridor.
Ah, yes, the Chicken's Neck. It's a narrow strip of land in West Bengal that connects India's northeastern states to the rest of the country.
And strategically important because...
It's the only land road to the northeast. It's a vital lifeline for the region.
And how narrow is it?
At its narrowest point, it's only about 22 kilometers wide. Imagine that.
That's incredibly narrow and vulnerable.
It is. And that's why it's such a sensitive area. Any disruption to this corridor could have serious consequences for India.
And I understand there's been some recent news involving Bangladesh and China in this region.
Yes, Bangladesh has invited China to invest in a river conservation project near the Chicken's Neck.
And why is that significant?
Well, it raises concerns in India about China's growing influence in the region and the potential for that influence to be used to exert pressure on India.
So this is a development that India will be watching very closely. Now let's talk about India's role in international humanitarian aid, specifically Operation Brahma.
This is a great example of India stepping up to help a neighbor in need. Operation Brahma was launched in response to the devastating earthquake that hit Myanmar on March 28th.
The earthquake that caused
Widespread damage and loss of life. Initial reports indicate over 1,600 deaths, and that number is likely to rise.
a terrible tragedy. So what exactly has India done?
India immediately sent rescue teams, medical aid, and relief supplies to Myanmar.
What kind of rescue teams?
A team from the National Disaster Response Force, or NDRF, was deployed. They're trained and equipped to handle search and rescue operations in collapsed buildings and other disaster zones.
And what about medical aid?
The Indian Army sent a specialized medical task force to set up a field hospital in Myanmar. They're providing emergency medical care and surgical services.
And the Indian Navy is also involved, right?
Yes, 2 naval ships, INS Satpura and INS Savitri, were dispatched to Yangon carrying tons of humanitarian aid.
So a truly comprehensive response from India to help Myanmar in its time of need. Now, finally, let's talk about the recent update to India's maritime law, the Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill of 2024.
This is a significant piece of legislation that modernizes India's legal framework for maritime trade. It replaces the old Carriage of Goods by Sea Act from 1925, which was outdated.
And what are the key provisions of this new bill?
It clearly defines the responsibilities, liabilities, rights, and immunities of carriers involved in transporting goods by sea. It sets out the rules of the game for shipping companies and those who ship goods by sea. It clarifies who's responsible for what in case of damage, loss, or delays.
I see. And this new bill also aligns India's maritime law with international conventions, right?
Exactly. It incorporates the Hague Rules, which are a set of internationally recognized rules governing bills of lading.
Bills of lading, those are the documents that represent ownership of goods being shipped, right?
Precisely. So this alignment with international standards makes it easier for Indian businesses to engage in global trade.
And what else does this bill aim to achieve?
It aims to promote efficient port management, enhance the ease of doing business in the maritime sector, and ensure India's compliance with international maritime obligations.
So it's a comprehensive update that reflects the evolving landscape of global trade.
Absolutely. It's a positive step towards strengthening India's position as a major maritime player.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the key developments from March 31st, 2025, Part 1. We've covered a wide range of topics from space exploration and medical breakthroughs to environmental concerns, international relations, humanitarian aid, and legal reforms.
And as you've heard, these events are all interconnected in various ways. They reflect the complexities and challenges that India and the world are facing.
And I hope this discussion has provided you with valuable insights and knowledge for your UPSC preparation.
Remember, it's not just about memorizing facts. It's about understanding the connections, the underlying causes, and the potential consequences.
Exactly. And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider. Given all the advancements and challenges we've discussed today, what do you see as the most significant opportunities and potential obstacles for India in the next decade, particularly in fields like space technology and medical research?
Take some time to reflect on that question and see how you can connect these current events to your broader understanding of India's development and its role in the world.
And if you found this deep dive helpful for your UPSC journey, please like and subscribe for more in-depth analyses and discussions.
We're here to support you every step of the way.
Until next time, keep learning and keep striving for success.